Hey folks, Matt Horwitz, breakthefear.com. I hope you are doing well. I have a very special guest coming on for today's video. I have Gregg Swanson. Gregg Swanson is a mountaineer, and he's just an all-around fantastic guy. He has truly stepped onto his path, and he is making a difference in the world. So after Gregg summited Mount Rainier in Washington State, which is known as one of the most dangerous volcanoes in the world, after he reached the summit, then on his descent down with a group of climbers, he was literally wiped away, not completely away, in a powerful avalanche. After coming up, rolling on the snow, he popped up. Literally, the only thing that saved his life was the rope that connected him to the other climbers. With his feet dangling over the edge of a sheer 2,000-foot drop on what's known as Disappointment Cleaver, he waited for nearly 6 hours until a rescue chopper came. He survived many injuries. He had a fractured hand. He ripped his PCL in his knee. Even after the rescue chopper came, he had to walk a mile, and every single step he took, his knee literally hyperextended and popped out. It's just, this guy's story is amazing. So after dealing with the shock, after dealing with the shock for about a week or so, he experienced a complete state of bliss for nearly 2 months. And from that experience, he then came into connection with his bigger why. So literally, after a week, after this entire accident, it was on the news, his brother, he went with his brother. So him and his brother went to climb Mount Rainier because his brother's son had died about a year and a half prior. And they went to pay tribute and also to see why his son loved the mountains, and especially Mount Rainier, so much. So literally, after a week of all of this took place, Gregg is back in the gym every day at 5 a.m. He's got his arm in his cast and his leg in a cast, so he can't really use his knee. He literally took a large, like a hook you'd see from a garage or something, screwed that into his cast just so he could use the cable fly machines. And it wasn't until a woman walked up to him and she said, "Wow, you're really inspiring." So she knew, I'm checking my notes, so she knew about the avalanche story, but that wasn't really it. She said that if you're in the gym every single day at 5 a.m. and you just went through what you went through and you're in a cast and you have the cast on your knee, and she says, I have no excuses not to be in the gym. So then Gregg realized that in his life that he could not just be an inspiration to others, but that ultimately he could teach others how to live a more meaningful, how to live a life with more meaning, more passion, and more drive. I think you guys are really going to like this chat, so I hope you enjoy it. Alrighty, here it goes. You were on this mountain with your brother and a number of others, and you survived a massive and a life-threatening avalanche.
That's correct. My brother and I were taking a 5-day mountaineering course that was held by one of the guide services up there. And it involved climbing up halfway to, if people are familiar, and it's Mount Rainier. And if people are familiar with Mount Rainier, we stop at about 10,000 feet at your hut for about, 4 days. And we do some rappelling, some crevasse rescue, some ice climbing, learn how to maneuver ourselves around on the mountain. And then it all culminates with a trip to the summit, hopefully, if the mountain allows you, and then come back down and go all the way back down. So we were getting geared up at around 2:30 in the morning. When you climb a summit, you get up very early. Very early. 2:30 in the morning, 10,000 feet. It's not the exact warmest temperature in the world. Right. But it was a beautiful, beautiful night. And we were walking through some ice fields, some glacier fields. And what was really amazing about that, Matt, is right when we were at the foot of what's called Disappointment Cleaver, which is where you start the toughest part of the climb.
This is on the way up or on the way?
On the way up.
On the way up.
On my right-hand side was the sunrise, and on the left-hand side was the moon set. So it was a full moon, full sun. Could see them both as we were climbing up there. I mean, it was just beautiful, just absolutely, just a gorgeous, gorgeous sight. And so we were all feeling very good. 2 people had to stay behind because they pulled an Achilles tendon, but we did really well. We got to the summit. I mean, they don't call it Disappointment Cleaver for nothing. It's almost a vertical straight up, and it takes everything out of you.
And now, just backing up a sec, I saw the quote in one of the articles is that you said it was just you said if you tried hard enough, you could see both the sunrise and the moon at the same time. Yep. And you could say all you could do at that moment was just try to be there and breathe and just experience.
Yeah, it was amazing. That part up, up to that point, every day was amazing on the mountain. When you're on a mountain, it's just truly amazing. You're with that great energy and people, and you're having a lot of fun. But when you go to the summit, and when you have a view like that, it's just breathtaking. There's nothing like it in the world, and I've never experienced that since then. Is seeing both of those at that level of elevation, because at that point we were probably around 11,000 feet. So we climbed already. So it was just beautiful.
And what took you out to the mountain in the first place?
There was a few events. One of them in particular was, unfortunately, my nephew was killed in a serious accident. He was a mountaineer and a rock climber. He got me involved in mountaineering and rock climbing. He was involved in a serious accident doing an avalanche course in British Columbia. And my brother wanted to experience a little bit of the mountain like he did, so we climbed a few other mountains or attempted to, and wanted to really push it to the limits at this point. So my brother was with me, mainly honoring his son. I was there to honor my brother and my nephew, and just enjoying it also, right? So there's a few things that were there for us, and it was quite moving, actually, for what we were up there for. And it was just a great experience. So we get to the top. I mean, and we had to stop. I mean, if I could go through the whole thing very detailed on the way up, but there's parts where you're stopping, and we had to leave somebody halfway up there. We had to build a snow cave for her because she couldn't go any further. And when you're climbing, you don't take a guide and bring him back down, because then you leave everybody else at risk.
Right.
So we put her in like a little snow cave, and we climbed to the summit.
Wait, how do you build a snow cave?
Well, it wasn't a snow cave. It was kind of like a half a snow cave, just to keep the wind away from her and just keep her sheltered and that kind of stuff. And it was just a protective area for her to hang out in until we came down to pick her up. And so we get to the summit, and it's just amazing. I mean, it's beautiful. There's two other teams up there, and it's just great. June day, beautiful sunrise, not a cloud in the sky. And we stayed there probably a little bit longer than we should have. The guides were saying, okay, we got to get down, but because it was such a tough climb going up there, they wanted to allow us to hang up there and enjoy the beauty. So we had lunch up there, had some water, and walked over and signed the summit book. You have to walk across the crater of the volcano to the other side of the mountain, and you sign the summit book to say that you're up there. We come back down, and okay, let's start to go back down. Well, immediately we knew that it was going to be equally as difficult, because the snow was basically like a snow cone. Mm-hmm. It wasn't frozen anymore. When we were walking up, you could kind of do kick steps, and it would hold your weight. Now it was like stepping into a snow cone. And so we had our crampons on still, our ice axes, and we were just stepping in, and we'd go knee high into the snow. So going down, it was almost as tough physically as going up.
Well, they say the descent is sometimes takes twice as long and is even harder than the ascent.
The ascent is definitely more dangerous and takes quite a bit of challenging, especially if the conditions change. So about 1/4 of the way down there, we all started running out of water because it was so warm. It was so warm up on the summit that we pretty much drank all our water. So we're putting snow in our Nalgene bottles, trying to melt them and other things. And we get down to where the lady is, and we stop there for a rest and melt our snow some more, or try to melt it, and pick her up and start climbing down. And we're making some pretty good headway, but we're slipping and sliding, and it just really isn't a very fun environment, right, to say the least.
The whole mindset is kind of, let's get off of this.
Yeah,
now.
I mean, it was challenging, to say the least. I mean, I would have rather climbed up Disappointment Cleaver twice than come down at once in that condition. Right. It was really, really bad. So at the bottom of Disappointment Cleaver, there's what's called a traverse, where you have to walk across the mountain, across the bottom of it. And then we came across that way, and now we have to go across again. And in there is ropes that are anchored into the side of basically the snow at that point, because it doesn't hit rock. And you're supposed to clip onto it for safety. In case one of the climbers falls, the rope will hold them there, and they won't pull the other climbers off the mountain with you. It's kind of a safety precaution. Anyway, I was the last person on our rope team, and I was taking a few seconds to clip on, and I heard the lead guy say, "Hey, that's really not necessary. It's not really a good place to clip on." And I go, "Oh, listen, I just got it." And as soon as I got it, we took like 3 or 4 steps, and then I heard avalanche. And somebody was screaming avalanche, and I look up to my right and just see this huge, wet, powdery, concrete snow. It's not even snow, it's slush. If you think of living in New York and the streets get all watery and slushy, it's that type of a snow. It's not the fluffy snow. And so I start running across the traverse trying to get to the other side. But right in the middle, there's an anchor, which I have to unclip and clip. And as soon as I try to do it, the snow just starts coming down. So I try to duck under and put my ice axe in the mountain to hold me. Well, you're talking about tons and tons and tons of snow coming down, falling down on you, and a little ice axe isn't going to do much. So it took me off. I felt me, and all I knew was me at that time. I knew I was anchored to other people, but I didn't know where they were because the snow completely buried me. And I was just being taken down the hill. I was completely buried, and I was thinking, okay, when we stop, I had to figure out which way is up. So I had to, make a hole to spit to see which way is up. How do I get out of here? I had to be calm and start to dig my way out, and hopefully they'll find me. And as I'm thinking all this, pop, I come on top of the snow. And I'm still moving, but I'm sitting down on it like going down a slide, like a water slide. But the water isn't water, it's snow. So I'm sitting on this, and I'm seeing the edge of a cliff come closer and closer and closer. Jeez. And I'm thinking, I'm not slowing down. I don't know where my ice axe is. I don't know where anything is, and I can't maneuver. So I'm just sitting there thinking that this is going to be it. Getting closer to the edge, and then I stop. And there's the climbing rope goes across from my left hip to my right shoulder and anchors me right, stops me right. My legs are hanging off the cliff.
Oh my goodness.
And I look down, I don't know how many thousands of feet. It's got to be 2,000 to 3,000 feet straight down to these ice blocks underneath us that if you fell, you'd be killed instantly. It was just, and it still was a sunny day. And that's what's so ironic, right? It was a beautiful day, but here, at least at this point, I was hanging off this mountain. After I took a deep breath and kind of looked to see where I was, there was a lot of people screaming. I didn't know. My brother was in 2 rope teams ahead of me, so I didn't know where he was. I didn't know because I figured if I'm the last person sitting, everybody else has to be hanging off the mountain because there's no mountain left. And I looked down to my left, and there's my climbing partner who wasn't in front of me in the rope line, but was the first one who's sitting next to me. Well, not sitting next to me, he's standing. The only thing that's holding him up is a carabiner that we have that's wedged between 2 rocks, is the only thing that's holding him up from slipping, which would pull me off, because it was that rope from him across my shoulder to the top of which I found out later was our guide who had it around his hand, which was holding us.
Oh my goodness.
So we looked at each other to make sure that we were okay, and we were both banged up. We didn't know what exactly was wrong with us. My hand was immobilized, my left hand. I just couldn't move it, and my right leg, my knee just hurt. I didn't know what happened, right? So as best we could, I get a prusik cord, which is a small cord you use on climbing to tether him to me so that he wouldn't fall, because if he slipped, he would have fell. This whole time, we're still hear screamings from beneath us, and there's a lady beneath him who's kind of standing on a rock ledge with the water. It's so warm that the snow is melting and creating waterfalls on the side of this mountain. And this one lady is kind of moving back and forth to move her way out of the water. While she's doing that, she's dislodging us, and we're slipping.
Oh my goodness.
So we're telling her to don't move. And we don't know who else is beneath us. We just don't know. And probably we're sitting there, so I can't see behind me. So the doctor who's next to me can see behind me, and he goes, "Oh, there's people up there. There's some other folks coming." Well, it seemed like forever, but it probably was forever. About an hour and a half, just hanging there. Finally, somebody came down from the top of the mountain, a rescue person, and talked to me and said, "My brother's up there. He's okay," and started to situate us so that we wouldn't slip and fall off any further. Mm-hmm. He was able to go see the lady who was beneath us, and he took out all of my clothes in my backpack because it was so warm. We took off our down jackets and put them in our backpack. He took those out to hand them down to her so that she could stay warm or at least get warmed up. And so I was just on a fleece and a long sleeve shirt, basically, sitting there. About 2 hours later, some helicopters started to come up, and found out that they were news helicopters. And we heard rumors. People were yelling back and forth, saying that there's a rescue helicopter coming, but they can't get through the clouds. It was an Army helicopter. And so we saw these news helicopters coming, and they were just taking photos of us without even trying to help us.
Oh my goodness!
It was pretty disheartening when.
Yeah, jeez.
So we're sitting there, or I'm sitting there, and now the sun's starting to go down. We've been there for about 6 hours, and that whole time is trying to do logistics of holding on to your people, trying to keep yourself composed. They had to get all of the rope anchored so that nobody else would slip and fall down and pull the rest of us off. Once they got that anchored, they had to anchor it down at different spots. Once they got that anchored, they came down and said, "Okay, you can anchor, but I can't help you. You have to come up on your own." And it was probably at least 100 yards, maybe 1,000 feet that we slid down. And it was at a steep angle. So now I'm at the point where myself and others have to work their way up. All during this time, though, we kept hearing a person screaming and hollering beneath us on the mountain. And, we didn't know who that was. We just, because we're all on the mountain, we don't know what's going on. And finally, the screaming kind of subsided. We figured, okay, the person moved off to the side and they got out of the waterfall and they're okay. I climbed on my butt all the way back up to the top and found my brother there and sit next to him on this rock, and we can't leave until, everybody's up there. Also, there's no helicopter yet, so we're starting to contemplate we have to stay on the mountain overnight.
Oh my goodness.
And there's people soaking wet, there's injuries, and we don't know what really to do. Well, I'm super dehydrated because I ran out of water 10 hours ago.
Oh my.
And I've been sitting so the only water that's up there is 34, 36 degree cold water. They give that to me and I start going into, shock almost, because my core temperature is so cold that the water is cooling off further. So I start going to hypothermia, but yet I'm also dehydrated. So I couldn't drink water. I was damned if I do, damned if I didn't. So I would eventually just take a little sip and hold it in my mouth till it got warm enough where I could at least swallow it without becoming shaking violently because I was so cold.
Wow.
Did that for, an hour. So now we're looking at, 9 o'clock at night, 9:30, the sun's gone down, the moon is coming up, and here's a cycle we saw all over, just the opposite. And we hear a helicopter coming because they sent for an Army rescue helicopter, but because it was getting so close to sunset, clouds were forming around the mountain, and they're not allowed to fly through clouds because of what happened to my nephew. You fly through clouds, you hit the mountain, and it could be disastrous for the crew who's trying to save us. But there was an opening in it, and they came through and were able to land down about a mile from us. So the good news was there was a helicopter there waiting for us to take us off. The bad news was it was a mile away, and we all had to walk down there. And when you're on a mountain, there's nobody taking you on their back and walking you, because they have to look out for themselves.
Right.
Right. It's not a mountaineering is a tough sport to understand, because it is very selfish in some respect, but you also need a team to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
You need the team to succeed, but yet when it comes down to it, it's your life or somebody else's life. You have to watch out for yourself first, because if you try to help somebody else, you're both going to die.
Right.
So we all understood that we had to walk ourselves out. And at that time, the top of the snow was starting to get crusty from it getting so cold again. So it was almost good news that we could stand on it instead of going knee deep into this slush. Well, the first time I took a step, put my weight on my right foot, the surface of the snow wasn't that crystallized yet, so I went through it, and my right knee hyperextended all the way back.
Oh.
It was so painful, I just screamed out. I didn't know it at that time, but what had happened is my PCL, my posterior cruciate ligament, had ripped. And for those who don't know what that is, that keeps your leg from hyperextending, your knee from going backwards. So every time I took a step, my knee would hyperextend backwards, and it would rip more and more and more for a mile. And I was just screaming each time. I knew at some point it was just getting old, me screaming, so I just stopped, because it didn't, whether I screamed or not, it didn't help. And I knew it was creating more of a problem for those trying to focus on their own deal. So after a while, I just said, okay, I got it all out of me. Now let me just focus on getting to the helicopter.
At that point, it's just about survival.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Just surviving and getting there, because what was nice is that helicopter was a goal. It was, we knew if we got there, we'd be okay.
Right.
Because my injuries weren't life-threatening. At least I didn't think they were. Perhaps if I stayed on the mountain some more, hypothermia would have set in, but I think that would have been the case for everybody. So get into the Huey. It's a huge, huge helicopter with bunks and cots, and lay down in there, and one of the medics there starts giving me an IV but forgets to warm it up, so I start going into hypothermia again and start shaking and just convulsing again, and he takes it out and starts to warm it up and puts it back in, and slowly each person starts coming into the plane or into the helicopter, and then finally somebody comes in completely covered, and we knew that one of them didn't make it. And we found out later it was the young gentleman, 25 years old, who was at the very end of the rope being covered in 33-degree cold water for 8 hours. He just didn't make it. And he came in. The helicopter took off. We're now looking at 10 hours on the mountain. No food, no water, no clothing, no shelter. All of us are just pretty banged up. I mean, severely banged up. The hospitals were all notified, and we were taken and dropped at several different hospitals because they couldn't take all of us. There was probably 10 of us there. Got into the hospital and went to the ER and got bandaged up as best I could, and met my brother. And it was a really, one of the things I have to say is most people think that you see your life flash in front of you when you're faced with those type of situations. I didn't. And for a long time I wondered why I didn't, and I just kind of released that. It just, people go through their own experiences in their own way. And I kind of just accepted that. But what did happen afterwards, Matt, is after I got back to Southern California, which is where I was living at the time, I went right back to the gym. I went
Really?
right back to the gym because that was my therapy. I love working out, right? I've always loved working out. I worked out excessively, and I think it was my excessive workout that helped save me on the mountain. I went back. It didn't feel right, so I stopped. I stopped going back to the gym. But what I did do is after I got my leg wrapped up and my hand wrapped up, I took a week off, maybe 3 days, and I went back in and I started working out again. And I had a cast on my hand at that time, and I had a brace that was only able to move slightly for my leg. What I did is I was so committed to rehabbing myself that I would take these screws that you see that hang up stuff in the garage. I put it in my cast in my hand so I could use the cable crossover machines. I would go on the Stairmaster for 20 minutes just to get my knee keep moving, because at that time I knew it was the PCL. I did some research on it. I knew that if I let it sit still, there'd be more scar tissue. It'd be harder to rehab. Mm-hmm. And out of all of this, a lot of things happen. I mean, you can't have your life not change with that. But one of the blessings from that is about 3 months afterwards, after going to the gym every morning, I'd get to the gym. I still went to the gym at 4 o'clock in the morning, or woke up at 4, went to the gym at 5. I would still do that for three months. People started to come up to me. I never knew them at the gym, just kind of, hi, that type of stuff. If you go to the gym, you see everybody, but you never talk to anybody.
Right.
And they came up to me and said, you really, really inspired me. And I go, well, the mountain climbing. She goes, no, and this was a lady at this time, said, no, it wasn't the fact that you climbed the mountain. It wasn't the fact that you survived the avalanche. She goes, although those things were very inspiring, but I would never do that, so I can't relate to climbing a mountain, or I can't relate to surviving an avalanche. But she said, what is inspiring is that even with your broken hand and your torn leg, you came into the gym every morning. She goes, when I thought about not coming in, I thought of you, and I said, I have no excuse. And so she thanked me for being her motivation, and a few other people did that. And I think that, Matt, it's a great learning for myself, and I think for others, is that people watch us, and I don't mean that they're judging us, but they're just watching to see how we move through our life. Mm-hmm. And we affect people's lives just by our own living. And when we know that, or take that to our heart, that we are inspiring people, are we inspiring them to their greatness, or we inspire them to play small, then I think we would all move through life a lot differently.
Right.
And I think that was one of the biggest ahas immediately from that. Obviously, I've reflected on the event since then, what led up to it. Most times when these things happen, you ask why, what's the meaning behind it? And the meaning, I think a mutual friend of ours, Brendan Bouchard, talks about the meaning is what you put into it. And that's the same with any situation, whether it's life-threatening or not. It's the meaning you put into it. And I've come to some good realizations about it, about the combination of the 4 bodies, right? The mental, the physical, the spiritual, the emotional, how all those, when they work together, will keep you alive. And that's basically what happened to me on the mountain.
Wow.
And it was quite a very powerful experience. Unfortunately, one person did pass away. Looking back on it, I would do it again.
Wow. All I can say immediately is wow, because it's there's so much in that story, and I could only imagine. Now, you said after that experience, you kind of fell into this I don't even know how you would say, this state of, what would you say? Like just
bliss.
Bliss.
And it's funny because I'm taking a course now on mysticism. I've been fascinated by mystics, and mystics is basically, a mystic experience is something you can't put into words, because it's based in the word mystery, which means it's unexplainable. It's not definable. And I'm realizing now that what I had there was a mystical experience, and that's a direct connection with the transcendence, whether you want to call it universal mind, God, infinite intelligence, however you want to label that force out there that gives life to everything, that holds everything together. When you're able to have that direct connection, you have that mystical experience. And looking back on it, that's what I had. It was so blissful, so peaceful. And it was a point of, not that I didn't care or was indifferent about things happening, but I was so into the now that's all that mattered, was the now.
And so this is just so people, soon after your recovery, you went into this just state of complete presence and complete, just everything kind of It was a different experience than you've ever
exactly.
had.
It was probably about a week afterwards. After the shock wore off and what's happening, and all of because I was met by news reporters and I was getting calls and people were coming down to interview me. My brother was on Good Morning America, and it was a pretty big deal at that particular time because there were some other deaths on the mountain earlier, a few years beforehand. So there was a lot of debate around mountaineering and who pays for us to be rescued. And so there was a lot of commotion around it. But
right.
After all that subsided and I was able to sit with myself, it was just like, wow, this really feels good. It was really a wonderful, wonderful experience. And that in itself was so memorable that it's like you want to chase that blissful feeling all the time. Right.
Well, they say kind of, it's like, once we, for me, I tasted some of those just tidbits of that, that deliciousness of life, so to say. And once I had those experiences while I was traveling, after I came back, not everything, but a big driving reason and purpose is I want to experience that again, kind of reminding me of what you said.
And Edgar Tolle talks about this very well in The Power of Now, right? When he was in his deepest, darkest moments laying on the couch and it was cold and windy and dark and he just had this aha, like he goes, I must be going insane. He said, who is the I that I'm talking to? Who is I and who's listening?
Right,
and he got into this whole, and then boom, he had this mystical experience. And perhaps to have those experiences, we have to go through some sort of a pressure. I'm not going to say it's a negative thing, but a pressure situation that allows our ego to go to sleep for a long time so that we can have that. Because that ego is kind of a buffer, right? It's a buffer between our soul and the transcendence. So we can function, so we can go out and have a good time, so we can go out and be successful. And when that's gone and when that's removed, then we have that direct connection. And I think that's that was just a wonderful experience.
And I think that's what many of us, even if we don't know it in those words are kind of looking for. Because just recently I was thinking it was like, the phrase, I need to get myself, let's say, to go to the gym, or I need to get myself to do these things in business, or I need to get myself to, it's like, who's the I and who is myself? Right. And I think from all of this, you've really gotten into, I like the words you use because I use the word the warrior a lot. And the warrior is the one who really reflects internally and really is the one who conquers thyself and really to control the mind, not to take control of your mind and not let it just run rampant and control your life. So how did that, for you, what does it mean sort of when people say, I need to get myself, this like the two I's, who are these two opposing things and how do you get them to align with what the bigger purpose is to all this? What worked for you?
Well, interesting point to that. I just want to add a footnote to that. You've heard people talk about, I need to go find myself.
Right.
Well, to find something, if you're going to go find something, you must have known it in the first place. If you're going to go look for your keys that you lost, you knew you had the keys. If you're going to go look for something that you lost, you had it in the first place. So when people say they're going to find themselves, they know innately there's part of them that's not there. It's not finding a new person, but they're finding truly who they are, that soul. So it's not going out and finding a new person. It's going out and finding that lost set of keys, that lost whatever that is. And for me, what I guess slowly after the avalanche, I was in sales for quite a long time. I was very successful in sales, not to blow my own horn, but to really, I used my mental discipline and my physical.
You were successful for a reason. You consciously were successful.
I purposely used my mental and physical strength, not to beat up my customers, but the physical workouts allowed me to harness my mental energy so that I was able to be successful in sales. And I will address your point in a second that when things happen in our life, or at least when things happened in my life, that sales wasn't so sexy anymore and things were starting to, but I still had the mental, the physical, the emotional intelligence part of it, which is harnessing your desires. It's when you can harness, when you say you want that cookie,
looks like we
but you don't have it. That's part of emotional intelligence level moving from sales, I was moving into more of a purpose. So when people are saying that they want to go find themselves, or how does somebody, who is the I and who is the one that's listening? Part of getting that, what I call integrity, that structure, the alignment, is there's the four bodies: the physical, the emotional, the spiritual, and the mental. Mm-hmm. And then there's the three selves. There's the ego, the soul, and yourself. That self never changes. That's that part that lives on. Then there's the soul. And when you can get those three things aligned with why you're here on earth, really your purpose.
Right.
Then you start to have those connections, those mystical experiences. Then you have those serendipity events. And then you don't have to wonder who the I is anymore, because you are the I.
Wow.
And that, this may sound like it's not a warrior, but really the warrior part is, when you go back and look at some of the more esoteric versions of warriorism, even the samurais, right? They had a great mystical experiences. They had great art. They had emotional intelligence. They had physical abilities. They had all four of those bodies: the mental, the physical, the emotional, the spiritual, all in tuned. And when I say a warrior, again, it's not going out and beating up somebody and killing them and rape and loot and pillage. It's one who conquers themselves. The biggest obstacle we have in life is ourselves.
Right.
If we can conquer ourselves, we can do anything. And most of the time, we can't even conquer our self-talk.
and even I think I just became conscious of that, within a few years. But it's like, you have to dig. You have to be interested and curious about, how can I become better, whatever that means for those who are watching. Becoming better can be, you're going to be better in life in general. You're going to be better. Maybe there are people they have anxiety. They just aren't good around people. They want to become better at social, engagements, or they. Right. But I totally just lost my tangent on that one. I was going,
but with people. And this all comes down to, and I think we've talked about this offline, Matt, is why. Right. Why does somebody want to become better? Why does somebody want to become better in social environments? Why does somebody want to have a deeper relationship? Why does somebody want to have more money? And and it's not because we don't want the money for the money. People may be listening to this and saying, yeah, I want the money so I can buy a house. Well, it's not even the house we want. We want the feeling that the house is going to give us. And when we know that, we can then approach the material things in a different way. And that's also part of that warrior, right? Because it's taking the action and knowing all the things behind it, but it's the feelings it's how it makes us feel. And here's the tricky part. We don't even need those material things to feel that way. So when you live a life of complete bliss and happiness, we look at people who don't have anything and wonder, how can they be so happy? Well, because they've tapped into that. And I'm not saying that, and I completely embrace having a big house and wonderful things, and knowing that it's not who I am. That doesn't define me. So it's having fun with the toys. Right.
What helped? Was it the experience on the Avalanche, or did something happen earlier in your life that really helped you kind of discover? I mean, to me, I think it's kind of cliche when they say discover your purpose, and I think as we move through life, it kind of, once we get to the end, we can look back and kind of realize what that is. But I think for people, no matter what age they are, is that what are you most called to right now? What's your deepest passion right now? And then how can you move towards that? What did you experience in your life when?
Well, I think when you look back, first, a few definitions or a few context. A purpose is not a destination. It's something you live every day.
I like that.
It's not a destination. Your purpose is bigger than your life. It's something you do every single day, and it's usually not definable. So it's to create more love by being kind to people, whatever it might be. Right?
It doesn't end in 2 weeks. It's
right. Exactly. And so I kind of help people with that. When I look back, I think in childhood we all have these little inklings of, as kids we love to do everything. But there are some things that stand out stronger to us than others. What I have found, and I came to this about 4 years ago. I'm sure you've heard it, Matt, and I'm sure a lot of the people listening to this have heard it. Follow your passion, and the money will come, right? Just follow your passion. Well, I don't know about everybody else, but I had a lot of passions, right? I had a lot of passions. I had going to the movies, mountain climbing, rock climbing, working out. At that point, sales was a passion. I had all of these things like, how am I going to follow? How can I put all this stuff together?
How do you do them all together?
How do you do it? Because like I have so many passions, and I had friends that were great at health, at helping people recover from health, and they were also great gardeners. How do you? And this was one of the biggest perplexing things that I had was, and I tried to put all of it together. I tried to put all of it together, and I was just getting frustrated. Then after meditating and contemplating on it and doing my own soul searching, this is for me, and I would encourage people to try this on to see if it works for them. I believe we have passions that are just for us. We have passions that I will call intrinsically motivated, meaning we love to do it for the feel, for how it makes us feel. We love to work out for the sake of how it makes me feel. We also have our passions which we love to share with people, and we will constantly talk to people about it. We will share advice. So if you're a great gardener, you may say, oh, you know what you can do with those flowers? You can do this, and you'll get in there and you'll start futzing around with it. That's the passion that is part of the purpose, I feel, because again, part of mine was my working out, but I didn't want to be a trainer. Although I am a certified trainer, I did it for my own knowledge. I didn't do it to open up a gym.
Right.
What I have found is I love helping people find their purpose and finding that warrior aspect in them and getting a hold of their thoughts, their mental strength. Helping people, and it sounds so cliche, be the best they can be. I think people think of themselves too small, that they're capable of so much more. That there's a movie I just saw. We Bought a Zoo.
Haven't heard of it. Is it good?
Oh, it's a true story. But in there, the catchphrase is 20 seconds of courage. If you just have 20 seconds of courage, your life will change. Right? And you think about those times, and this was in context of asking a girl out on a date, right? You have 20, but imagine those other times of 20 seconds of courage of calling up and asking for that job, 20 seconds of courage of saying, I'm going to be my own boss, 20 seconds of, and people, this is where I want to help people say they have the courage. They do have the courage and act on it. That's part of that warrior coaching that I do, is taking the action behind their dreams.
I love it. Where did your, I think you got a lot of it from mountaineering, but, in that movie, again, just so people, if they want to look at it, it's We Bought a Zoo. Right. And it's about... It's about a zoo. It just came out on DVD this past week, and it was in the movies. Matt Damon's the star of it. And it's about a zoo that's outside of San Diego. Matt Damon's wife passes away, and he's going through a change in life and wants to move out of the town, and ends up buying this house in the country, which happens to be a zoo attached to it. And his brother told him when he was young, just have 20 seconds of courage and your life will change. And I think that's so true. I think so many of the things that, which is a good sign, because when you need that courage, because you need to move through those things that are scary, that are frightening. But I think just beyond that lies things that sometimes we can't even imagine how things will connect and what will become. But I think the things that we really want to create, that we really want to do, and that we really want to become in life can just be 20 seconds away. Right. But in that decision of either you go, oh, no, I'm not going to do that, or no, I'm just too... But in that making that decision, I think that's where that warrior mentality takes place. Absolutely. Right then and there, you say, no, this scares the hell out of me, but I know that the benefit that me doing this is going to lead to something that's so fulfilling, that's when you have to have that mindset. So let's say someone's in a situation, whatever it is, when they need to turn from ignoring it in this situation where they know right there they can take action, but they're scared, but it's a good sign that they're scared. What helps people in your experience kind of step on that path of the warrior and choose to, let's say, have that courage for those 20 seconds? Well, part of it gets back to the why, right? You know, their life reason. Why do they want to change? Why do they want to be that? And I can't overestimate or
overstress that enough, because without a why, we'll find so many good reasons not to take action.
Right, exactly.
Right. Well, we will find so many good reasons not to take action. So the first is that why. The next is I would advise or ask people to, what's the difference between being afraid and being excited? If you sit there and think of a time when you were really excited, where did you feel it in your body? Probably in your stomach, probably at some area. When you're afraid, where is it? The same area.
Place.
It's just labeled differently. So the first thing is, instead of saying I'm afraid, say I'm excited. Right? Label it differently.
Right.
And it really helps, because if you think about it, when you're about to do something very exciting, you get that same feeling. But when you're about to do something very fearful, you get the same feeling. It may be off a difference in your body, but really you can fool yourself in saying it's the exact same feeling, exact same spot. Just call it excitement.
And I think if the people can freeze in that moment and realize that if I take this 20 seconds of courage, that what it will lead to, that can be quite exciting. Even though it's the scariest thing that they're facing right now, they know that if they break through that, then what lies on the other end is
right.
Can lead to that excitement.
That's the key. And that's the key with fear, is when people are afraid, they are holding in their mind a picture of an unfavorable outcome.
Right.
Right? Because you're only afraid if you think something's not going to work. If you know it's going to work, you're not afraid, you're excited. So you find the why, you change the phrase from fear to excitement, and then you see yourself successfully completing that task 3 minutes past it. So now that you've asked this person out for a date, now that you've gone and signed up at the gym, now that you've put your shingle out that you're an entrepreneur, see yourself successfully completing that and having the person say yes or whatever, then there's no fear, because the fear is caused by thinking it's going to be a unfavorable outcome.
Right.
And those three things could change a person around. Then there's that fourth, which is trust. Trust yourself, trust that it's going to work, and then take the action. Exactly.
Like I mentioned to you, when I go out, or when I go out with people and we're doing comfort challenges and putting yourself in a situation where there's certainly fear and it's immobilizing in a sense, but there's nothing. We're not on the side of a mountain. It's not a physical fear. It's just something in their head or inside that, with conditioning, I mean, like we'll take people out and take them in highly socially uncomfortable situations where there's so many of these fears, but when you really stop and become conscious and look at them, they're all just BS.
Right.
They're non-existent. There's no physical harm that can happen in this situation. And for me, now, because I've done them so much, that anytime when I get the feeling of like I'm scared, it's an immediate calling that I know that I need to take action. And now it doesn't mean that I do it right away and that I'm completely fearless. I'm still scared and I get nervous or sweaty, but I take a minute, I step aside and I just reflect and I say, this is it. This is right now. I know that this is here for a reason. I can no longer ignore that feeling. I know that, and it's something as small as like, let's just say I want to tell someone the truth, or the other day I saw somebody and I was immediately drawn to them and I wanted to go over and talk to them, but they were with this other person, or all those things that could be an excuse. But now, no matter what it is, I mean, I'll be driving my car, and I don't care if there's 3 people who have never met me before in the car. I'll pull over on the side of the road to like move a bag of trash. But before, I would be scared because, they're going to think about me this way. But now, my immediate gut reaction, as soon as I feel that fear, which still scares the hell out of me, I get so excited because I know that metaphorically what it represents is that me not being held back from fear. Because I think that what goes on in our heads and those fears is what basically holds us back from everything.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And they're all metaphors. That's a good point. The trash or whatever it might be, or the person you want to talk to. There is in sports and other psychology, there was 4 psychologists that did independent studies, and they brought together the same end result, that how you do anything is a reflection of how you will do everything.
I love it.
And there's been, I think, Peak Potential uses that, T. Harv Eker uses that, but really it wasn't developed by, not to discount T. Harv or Harv Eker, because he's a great personal development person, but it comes from psychology and studies, and that how we do anything is an indication of how we will, not how we do, but how we will do anything. So the more you can take action and use the garbage bags for a metaphor. And the other thing to emphasize, when you get that feeling, it's good because what you're about to do means you care about it.
Yes, yes.
If you didn't care, you wouldn't have any feeling about it whatsoever. So you talk to high-level athletes. I was just listening to interviews with some baseball players, and they go, opening day, do you still get nervous? This is the 15th time. And they go, if I didn't get nervous, there'd be something wrong with me. Right? So to embrace the nervousness, know that it's, as you said, you changed it from an anchor to not take action. You changed it to an anchor to take action.
Right. And
it shows that you care. And you look at, we've just been so conditioned by parents and teachers and bosses and everybody else to be afraid of speaking up and stepping into our own power that really we have to start doing those little things like stopping in the middle of the road and picking up a trash can. Yeah,
exactly. And I think it's a great point, because even recently I was in a situation, a consulting situation, and I left, and I gave them I said, I'm ending this early in 2 weeks, and one of the other women I worked with was just, I saw that she actually ended up telling me later on that she had wanted to quit this place where she was for over a year. And I mean, I was recently at a speaking engagement, and I, in the middle of this panel, I just literally got up, left, and I had to go pee. I had to go use the bathroom, and I just came back. And I do these other things that sometimes if I do something big and grand, people think, oh, Matt, how did you do that? How did you? And I just say, well, I mean, really simply, it's every fear, no matter how big or how small, and it's not saying that sometimes I will see out. It's part of the nature of things.
Right.
But I'm so conscious about the fact that if I do something that's big and courageous, people think I'm just that way. And it's like, no, I'm that way because I choose to do the small things, because it metaphorically, like you say, creates that habit. A funny thing is what I've been doing for the past probably about 2 months so far is I do 11 push-ups in the morning, and I do 11 push-ups in the evening. And my friends are like, oh, you can do 25, you can do 30. And I say, it's not about the number of push-ups I'm doing, but it's about how many days, it's about the consistency. It's can I do it every day? Because there's so many, this isn't a fear challenge, so to say, but it's sort of say the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. If I can get up every day and do those push-ups no matter what, no matter if I'm late, no matter if I'm sick, no matter if I have, I don't know, it's that same thing with flossing. I've recently adopted the habit of flossing every night, because if you take those shortcuts, if you skip that, then you're really going to skip out the important things in life. And I think that's...
Yep. And to emphasize another point that you brought up about facing your fears, there's that fine line then where you do not you, but somebody would do these outrageous things just to get attention, not to conquer their fear, right? So there's those individuals that need the attention, and they don't care what people think, and they go so outrageously overboard to get attention.
Right.
That's different, right?
When you
use actions to grow for yourself, not to get attention, it's a different type of action, and it all comes from the intention behind the action.
Right.
Because I'm sure we could think of people who have become very flamboyant and just out there, and it's not because they're afraid and they're doing it to test themselves. It's because for whatever reason they want that attention. Then there's others who, like yourself, will do something not to get the attention, but to do it for your own personal growth.
I can't help anytime. I mean, sometimes I do things that are physical fear challenge, like you say, like mountaineering or climbing or hiking or camping, or things that definitely involve more physicality and more body. There's certainly a ton of equal amount of growth potential there. But when I go out and do these small things that are so scary, it's funny because sometimes anyone listening to like, hey, let's go into a coffee shop on a Friday afternoon during lunchtime, and I'm going to make you do 10 push-ups, then you have to do 10 squats, and then you have to shout, I don't know, something silly like, I don't know, I can't think of anything right now, but it's like, people will laugh at that. Oh, yeah, that's funny, and then you say, okay, let's go, come with me. We're going to go out this afternoon, and we're going to consciously put ourselves in situations that are very scary in order to break through those fears and overcome them. And I can't tell you I'll do a few of them, and I literally get high. My body is just surging with energy. It's quite, for me, I like the metaphor. That's why I call the site Break the Fear. Well, I wanted to actually call it Break Through Fear, but I figured through might get kind of complicated for people to spell, even though it's
Right.
simple. But it's really the analogy of when you break through that, you actually instantaneously transform yourself. Whether it's
Yes.
big or small, but immediately afterwards, you cannot help but just get an immediate surge of. I mean, you can go to the gym and squat 400 pounds after doing a number of these things. It's just
Yeah.
a
It's
surge of energy. So, yeah, it's good stuff.
Absolutely. And I think that that's what holds a lot of people back. I think is just taking the action and the fear. And there's so many things that people ask what holds them back, and I the reason you're breaking through that, the reason you do those things is because you know your why.
Exactly.
Right? If you didn't have a why, you would go, "This is stupid. I'm going to go home."
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's no why behind it. When a person really knows their why they're doing what they're doing, not just to pay bills, not just to pay the rent, not just to take a 2-week vacation, not just to appease their significant other or their boss. When they really know why they're doing something and they realize how small they're playing, then they'll start to do those things purposely, consciously, with intention. Otherwise, it may be just a nice entertainment thing,
right?
And once the entertainment value wears off, they'll say, "No, I don't want to do it anymore."
Exactly. And for me, the reason why I choose to do these things to break through these fears is that any time in my life, if there's something I'm really drawn to do or a goal or something, I don't want anything to hold me back. So,
right.
Well, it's not that I don't want those things to occur, but that when they do occur, I just plow through them. And I think it's conscious growth, doing things to make sure that when those things happen, that I can do that. So,
absolutely. And I, got news for folks who are listening, that once you start to walk on your path, as I call it, your path with heart, there's going to be obstacles. There has to be obstacles, because anytime you're moving towards something, you're going to come across obstacles. The only time you don't find obstacles is when you're standing still or moving backwards.
Exactly.
You have to. And so if you're sitting there listening to this and wanting to, take some great action and thinking, yes, I 100% agree with law of attraction, and those things work, and they absolutely do, and I work with those myself. However, to foolishly think that there's going to be no struggle is foolish.
Yeah.
You can call it something different. You can call it a challenge. You can call it whatever. But there are going to be points in time where you have to go outside your comfort zone. Whatever you want to call it, you have to, because you can only hold the amount of abundance and love as your comfort zone. So as your comfort zone grows, you can hold more abundance and love, and so you have to keep expanding your comfort zone so you can keep holding more abundance and love.
Definitely. For me, I say that anytime you set out a desire, a creation, a dream, a goal, a manifestation, that when that challenges and fear and situations, they will always come in at different times. Mm-hmm. But if you change the paradigm of them, is that, to me, it's I call it the universe coming in with a little gift. They're saying, "Oh, you want this big grand vision? Well, here's this test. Are you big enough to move through this?" And that it's a sign that I think that people are on the right path if they have those challenges, and then being conscious of, breaking through that and moving towards whatever it means for that person, moving in a direction. I just like to say, moving in a direction that you're called to. Yeah,
exactly, and that's so perfect. Absolutely.
So tell us about, just looking at the clock here, I know you have probably about 5 more minutes left before you have to jump off, but so your website, warriormindcoach.com. Let's say someone's listening to this or watching this. What is Warrior Mind Coach about?
It's about basically what we've been talking about here. It's taking control, consciously controlling your thoughts before, during, and after a critical event in your life. And that critical event could be asking somebody out for a date. It could be changing your career direction. It could be starting a business. But most of the time, when we don't have to make tough decisions, we don't have to. Our thoughts are just there, and unfortunately, they're mostly negative. So we work on that too, or I work on that too. But it's mainly when you want to change something, when you want to create something big in your life, it's controlling the thoughts, because thoughts lead to feelings, feelings lead to actions, and actions lead to results. So control your thoughts, control your results. And that's what basically the crux of it is. And I was checking out your website over the past few days, and I think you have some great stuff over there. You have the Warrior Mind podcast. Yes.
You have a number of Gregg's got some great free stuff. He's got you have a mini course on creating mental strength, which actually I'm going through right now, which is fantastic. You have audiobooks, you have books. Definitely, I'm subscribing to your podcast. I have that in my iTunes now. And tell us a bit about your latest project, because you were telling me more about this last time. But the Warrior's Quest. This is something which is kind of the accumulation of all of your life's, all you've experienced, which is this intensive thing that you do with people. Can you give us a little taste? Or you do that with people and you do that with small groups. What's right. That in a nutshell?
Right now, I have found in my experience, you've gone to, and we talked about these great weekend events, which really pump you up, get you motivated, and they push you through barriers or whatever it might be, but then they send you home with no support. Number one, I think they're great, like Tony Robbins, all of them. They're fantastic. There's nothing wrong with any of them. But what I have found lacking is the individuality of them and the follow-up support.
Right.
So on the Warrior's Quest, if you're a person who's knows there's something more for you in life and you just don't know what it is, and you just got that inkling. We all have that feeling like there's more. I've accomplished a lot, but there's more to it. I will take you through 2.5 days of one-on-one, just me and you, in an intensive, in a retreat. I cover the lodging and the food, 2.5, and it's however long we go. Usually the first day is about 8 hours because it's about from 3 to 10. Then the next day is about 14 to 16 hours.
Now, this is not for people who want to do a little – this is for people who really want to radically take a shift or radically move in the direction.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then on Sunday or the third day, we go for about another 6 to 8 hours. Then there's a year of follow-up coaching once a month to make sure you stay on course. See, there's this dissipative system theory that when an open system, which we are an open system, gets so much input into it, it does one of two things: either collapses or expands to a higher level of consciousness. With humans, that's either an emotional breakdown, right? I can't take it, right? We've heard people say, I can't take it, I can't take it.
Yeah.
Or you quantum leap to a higher level. This weekend is intended to get you to quantum leap to a higher level. You come in one way, you leave, and your system is expanded.
That's fantastic. You know what? I'm going to. I didn't write it down now, but I'm going to write it down on my bucket list. I think I'm going to come out and join it. I think it sounds. I've had a number of people and friends who have done some extraordinary. A friend of mine, I mentioned to you, he ran from Florida to California,
yep.
And he didn't mention specifically what he did, but there are different types of warrior training that really work on your physical. You said your emotional, your mindset, your spiritual, and really help take people onto that path. And I think I highly recommend just getting to know you over the you're a phenomenal guy, a phenomenal individual, and I think this is only shedding the light. So I highly recommend anybody listening or watching us definitely check out Warrior Mind Coach. I think Gregg is doing great stuff. So
thank you, Matt. And just the blog, I've gotten great feedback on the blog from you, Matt. I mean, you're doing some great stuff with Break the Fear and helping people just go through that in these podcasts and the video interviews or chats or fireside chats or whatever. I think you're doing a great job as well as supporting people like myself and also us helping you. I think together it's a synergistic effect. It really is. And I've gotten a lot of great feedback on my blog, and the blog is warriormindcoach.com/blog.
Okay.
I write a blog post every single day on a different theme, and 5 days a week. Just go there, and there's some great information. I was actually recently published in Napoleon Hill's newsletter.
Oh, fantastic! I'm re-listening to. I've read it a few times, but I'm actually going since we last spoke. Think and Grow Rich again, which I swear is a whole new book this time around.
Yep.
But,
yep. Well, I was just recently published. They have a newsletter called Napoleon Hill Yesterday and Today, and they give a snippet of his information and then a guest post. And I was just featured in their last Friday post.
Awesome, man! Congratulations.
Thank you.
Awesome. That's awesome. I'm definitely going to check that out. And anyone again, check out Gregg. His stuff is fantastic. WarriorMindCoach.com. Anything you want to say signing off for anybody?
Just thank you for listening, and thank you, Matt, for doing what you're doing. It's a really great help for the people that are listening to you, following you, and you're doing some fantastic work. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, man, and likewise, certainly. I guess, and before we sign off, all I can say is that I encourage you to step on the path, of the warrior, one who consciously moves towards the directions that they are called, And then when you're on that path, make sure you help others hop on as well. And that's really the thing, is when you is definitely pass it forward and help as many people as you can. And I think that's a part of why we're here on Earth right now, is to not only improve ourselves, but to like you said, when you're at the gym and people were looking at you, and then you realize that maybe my life just isn't about me, and how many other people's lives can I touch and can I affect in a positive fashion. So, Gregg, man, with all my heart, man, thanks again. I appreciate it. And thanks, guys, for tuning in. Really appreciate it. Keep moving forward. Keep breaking through fear, and adopt that mindset of the warrior. Step onto the path. Thanks again, Gregg.
All right, take care.
All righty.
Bye-bye.